essa boca sábia. Primeiro foi o verbo e quem pronunciou o verbo brilhou. Na escuridão da noite, a chuva cai no horizonte inteiro. Do fundo do navio negreiro desembarcaram tantos bantos e sudaneses, grandes e pequenos chefes. O mar inteiro entre a vida e o cativeiro, do meio da mata pro mundo do medo, sem sentença nem relato.
Muito boa tarde a todos e todas.
Good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure to be here hosting this session. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for having me. We are here to reflect upon synergies that can be built between circular design, nature-based solutions, and ecosystem regeneration. The feasibility of the transition into a circular economy model is about the way we conceive and design our productive systems. Circular design is inspired on nature systems, and it's essential for us to create regenerative solutions that reconcile economic development and nature conservation. In this session, we will be addressing these connections in depth, as circular design and nature-based solutions can drive ecosystem regeneration, support biodiversity protection, and at the same time help us to mitigate and adapt to climate changes, specifically in strategic production sectors. We will also discuss the key role of funding and public-private partnership in transforming projects that can help us in the transition to a truly circular economy. This panel will have 3 times. We will begin with the presentation of the role of nature in a circular economy. Then we'll have 3 concrete cases of companies that are already putting those concepts into practice. And we'll conclude with an interactive panel, which will help us reflect upon these topics. And to begin the session on designing nature-based solutions for a circular economy, it's my honor to invite up to stage Executive Director for Latin America of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Luisa. Welcome. You have the floor.
Boa tarde.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Take your seats. They told me I could be making my presentation in English or in Portuguese. I hope that there is simultaneous translation from Portuguese into English because we are in Brazil and I'm going to honor our mother tongue. Thank you, Marcelo, and everyone at CNI, David, Larissa. Thank you very much for organizing this panel, which is so important. It's really important that we discuss nature and circular economy within the scope of this forum in Latin America and Brazil, where nature is so abundant and so present and core to our economies. I'd like to thank Sitra as well for organizing this forum here and Fiesp for sponsoring it. It's a very beautiful event. And thank you so much for this excellent organization work. And this is such a timely issue we are discussing here. We are going to be talking about nature and economy. Economy depends on nature, and we know that nature does not depend on economy. Nature is being actually destroyed by our current economy that adopts a linear logic. What is this linear logic? It's one in which we generate economic value as we extract natural resources, transform, and waste it in a number of ways. Nature's always been circular. That's the nature of nature. It's always seeking balance and regeneration, and nature, by doing that, provides us with essential services that are essential to life and to economy itself. So economy needs to be in tune with nature for us to be able to plan and think about long term on this planet so that we can have resilient value chains. So for us to have a long-term economy needs to be profitable because it's the economy. At the same time, it needs to support nature and its thriving. And this is what circular economy is about. But the linear economy we have today, which is based on manufacturing, transformation, and waste, It's been working for a long time. It's been established like that. That's how we create value, and this is a mindset that looks normal because it's been like that for such a long time. But there are some choices by design. There are design choices that make it linear. It's been designed to be linear. And it's the root cause of the big challenges humankind is faced with today, such as climate change, for instance. Most discussions about climate change so far have been focused on energy transition, which is actually key for us to really do what is required, but this only accounts for, we'll only be doing half of what is required for us to be within the 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement if we focus on energy transition alone. The other 45% about the way we make, use, and manufacture products and materials in our linear economy. This linear economy is also the root cause of biodiversity loss. 90% of everything we've done, of all of the human pressure on biodiversity, is connected to the way we extract, produce, use, and foods and products in a linear way. It's also the root cause of pollution. Pollution is a symptom, but it's also yet another factor that puts on pressure on nature itself. And to make matters worse is that this linear reasoning is suppressing, restricting the services and solutions that nature provides us with. Nature is so innovative, it can offer so many solutions in terms of carbon sequestration and smart solutions and innovations, but we are suppressing and destroying nature's ability to provide us with those services. But things could be different, and that's what we are here. We're here to discuss that. And it's really imperative that we change the ruling principles of economy. We can help nature thrive, but also bring to the core of our economy these solutions, these smart solutions that nature can offer us. So what are the new principles that need to guide our economy? The circular economy principles are that of doing away with waste and residue, circulate high-value products and materials, and regenerate nature. This is the philosophical lens for us to see value creation in a circular economy. In circular economy, and now I'm going to be a bit more technical, we look at material transactions, the material flows that could be finite materials, the non-renewable ones, or biomaterials, renewable materials. But I'll call them biomaterials here. And also, in a technical language of circular economy, we say that materials flow into two cycles. One is the biological cycle, and the other is the technical one. The biological cycle, actually, the technical cycle is that of use, a cycle in which we want materials to circulate as much time as possible, creating economic value. And there are many strategies that we can have, different business models that are designed for reuse, repair, remanufacture, and recycling. And then there's the biological cycle, which is one in the materials flowing there that they degrade. So we go through shorter cycles. So the biological cycle is only biomaterials can circulate. In the technical cycle, both biomaterials and finite materials can circulate. In making and using biomaterials is where we find more opportunities to operate in sync with nature. That's the beauty and the power of designing, of nature-based design, because that's in that cycle that we can use the intelligence, innovation, and services that nature provides us with and have the most positive outcomes that we can have with circular economy. So biomaterials are based on agriculture, forestry activities, fisheries, and then there are different chains, different value chains, many of them global, that depend on these materials, be it for food, cosmetic, drugs, which are the typical approaches of biological cycles, which is short, the materials that are consumed and are degraded, or in the typical sectors of technical cycles such as fashion, furniture, auto industry. Those are materials that can circulate much longer in these industries, provided we adopt a approach that is connected to the technical cycle. But our production today, be it agriculture and forestry, are also based on a linear reasoning, and they are important drivers of climate pressure and biodiversity loss. But how can we change that? We need to think about the role of businesses. Businesses are a very important player in material transactions. We have to look at the demand of biomaterials and see how the companies that demand those materials can adopt circular design principles when making, consuming, and using those materials. And innovation can happen in design, which is what we call upstream, or downstream, which is what we do after the materials are in the market already. But the greatest power is in designing, adopting circular design approach in upstream. So because after you break the eggs, they're broken. So you think about the project, the way you design, the use of materials, how you make, how you select materials. That's very important to adopt the approach of circular design from the outset. And the design choices, when you think about biomaterials, they need to look at three things, which is where we can harvest both economic and environmental benefits. First, regeneration of nature in the production methods that capture or sequestrate carbon or store carbon and rebuild biodiversity. Also in the nutrient return, looking at the upside to returning nutrients to the land for its recovery. Circulate products and materials as much as possible. So thinking about the technical cycle, the most you circulate, more you're gonna be preserving the use of land, and you can create more value with what has been produced already. And replace, so the potential of biomaterials to replace problematic finite materials is also huge. And all of that is based on nature's intelligence, bringing it into the value chain so that it can reduce carbon in the value chains so that we can achieve nature targets in value chains. In the past few years, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has been addressing these themes of biomaterials in food products, in fashion, and packages. So how can we use nature's intelligence and solutions in these different industries? And we have seen improvements in the way these products and in these industries relate to nature. We have robust data showing food products, for instance, that can help nature thrive, and products you find in the supermarkets already. There's fashion projects that use the extension of the life cycle of garments and use less raw materials. So this is real, tangible, and economically feasible. My call to action is that we do indeed bring these developments in industry, putting nature at the core of design choices, at the core of decisions making when you talk about business models, because it's possible for us to really build and have a positive impact on nature when you think about biomaterials. You change the economy into an economy that does not harm nature as much, but in addition to that, you can reverse the crises caused by linear economy, so climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution. And it's increasingly important that we have public policies as well supporting the process. So a combination of business models and public policies so that we are looking at the future together. Usually circular economy policies have focused on manufacturing and the technical cycles, whereas other biomaterial policies oftentimes have stressed out linear production models, making the crisis even worse when they could be vectors and using these sectors and work as allies of nature. So my call to action is that we should be inspired by nature, use their services, and bring nature to the core of your choices of design, business models, products, and services, so that we can reduce damage to nature caused by linear economy, but we can also help nature thrive. Now, I'm going to invite up to the stage a person who's a leader and a pioneer in a circular economy in this region and beyond, who's going to be our next presentation. So I'd like to invite up to the stage Luiz Meyer, ESG Director at Boticário Group. Also Mary Granstrom, CEO of Origin by Ocean, Eduardo Ferlauto, Executive Director of Sustainability of the Renner Institute. Let's welcome our panel members.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Luisa said, as a Brazilian, I know that there's a lot of Brazilians here. I apologize, but I'll give my speech in Portuguese, but I'll be here by the end of the panel also to explain, to give any further explanations that you want in English if it's necessary. Boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Luiz Meyer, ESG Director with the Boticário Group. Boticário Group is one of the largest cosmetic manufacturers in Brazil. We today have more than 4,000 points of sales in Brazil, 3 manufacturing plants, 8 distribution centers, 21,000 employees, and last year our sales were more than 35 billion reals. So I'll try to show to you how a cosmetic company can make a difference on the circular economy agenda. We also support the Boticário Foundation, which for more than 35 years has been operating in Brazil to protect biodiversity in Brazil. And we will be at COP, just like many of you, showing the beauty of the work of Brazilian organizations. For us at the Boticário Group, ESG is non-negotiable. It's completely integrated into our business together with the most diverse business disciplines, and it's part of the decision-making process in our company, from finances to operations to R&D into marketing. In our ESG agenda today, there's 8 commitments and 7 themes, and one of the themes is precisely circular economy. And our objective is to minimize our environmental impact, especially the ones caused by solid waste in our operations, by reducing the volume of waste, also through recycling programs and circular practices. How do we measure our performance against those commitments? We look at the decrease in waste volume that we can achieve and the recycling volume that we are achieving, packages, for instance, and through with recycling, and also circularity, so the inclusion of post-consumer materials in our packages. These are different aspects that the last year also were part of the bonus of the more than 21,000 employees in the company. So that's the way we design projects, trying to solve the challenges of the big companies, and also have development and engagement programs for our franchisees and suppliers. And our suppliers program has been around for more than 28 years. So we've had very important results already in terms of solid waste. We've achieved 96% of correct management practices, and last year we achieved 100 sustainable stores. We use what we developed at Boticário Group, which is using low recyclability waste in our different stores. And to conclude my presentation, I'd like to talk about 3 solutions, and I hope to inspire organizations. So 3 things we already do at Boticário Group that can maybe inspire other businesses. We have Boti Recicla program since 2006. Is the largest reverse logistics program in the cosmetic industry in Brazil. Any cosmetic package can be returned in any of our stores today, and we pay consumers for the packages they return. Every 3 packages, you have a 15 discount in your purchases. So, and the materials are sent to 14 cooperatives that are our partners. Last year, the program grew by 85%, showing that every year we've been able to engage more and more consumers. The second solution is what we call plant price station. It's a partnership with green mining, but led by the Boticário Group. We try to shorten the supply chain and collect. There are 6 stations in Brazil, 4 of them in São Paulo, 1 in Minas Gerais, 1 in Bahia, shortening the collection cycle and pay waste pickers. In glass, for instance, we pay waste pickers 8 times more, so connecting the waste they pick with the glass manufacturing industry. And with that program alone, we've impacted 2,000 people. And last year, more than 2,000 tons of products were picked or waste. And the third solution, last but not least, is our industry solution. As an industry, it can also make a difference and shorten the chains and change this concept of linear economy into a circular economy. We work at ABIPEC, the Brazilian Association of Cosmetic Industry, and Fabio is here, and we have a program called Hands for the Future, program that's introduced 19 years ago. We've been working with this program from the get-go. So with this industry association, we try to develop, train, and shorten the work of very serious Brazilian cooperatives. So I'd like to invite you to learn more about what we've been doing in terms of circular economy and be inspired by our cases. You can read our ESG report that's been published this week. This is still in Portuguese only, but in 2 weeks it's going to be available also in Spanish and English on our website. Thank you very much.
Everyone, good news is that I'm not going to give this talk in Finnish, so it's going to be in English today. So my name is Mari Granström. I'm the founder and the CEO for Redesign by Ocean, and I'm super excited to be here today and tell you how we can turn environmental crisis of our oceans and make that foundation of a new regenerative bio and blue economy. At Redesign by Ocean, we turn invasive seaweed into high-value bio-based chemicals, creating new businesses, protecting biodiversity, and cleaning up the oceans in the process. The problem we are tackling doesn't actually start in the ocean, it starts on land. Excess nutrients from agriculture, wastewater treatment plants, industrial runoff flow into rivers and coastlines, triggering these massive algae blooms taking place around the world. In places like the Caribbean, that means mountains of invasive sargassum washing ashore every single year. We are currently looking at around 40 million tons of sargassum biomass annually. These blooms suffocate coral reefs, block sunlight, deplete oxygen, and release methane as they rot. They also paralyze coastal economies built on tourism and fishing. But this isn't just a local or seasonal issue. It's a symptom of a broken system. We are still polluting our environment with excess nutrients while depending on fossil-based materials like crude oil and synthetic chemicals in everything from skincare to our clothing, what we wear every single day. The global chemical industry sits right at the center of this contradiction, powering consumer goods while being one of the largest fossil fuel users and carbon emitters. What if we could break that cycle and regenerate instead of extracting? Our solution begins where the problem lies, with excess biomass caused by human impact. We have developed a patented biorefinery technology that can transform sargassum, this environmental hazard, into high-value functional ingredients for the cosmetics, food, textile, and wellness industries. Instead of extracting more from nature, we recover what has overgrown due to nutrient pollution and climate change and turn that into something very valuable. We have launched our first products, answering the industry's urgent need and legal pressure as well to move away from fossil-based chemicals towards bio-based alternatives and solutions. Our first product is Ocean Thicks, an algae-based thickener that replaces synthetic and fossil-derived ingredients in skincare, textiles, and food. It offers a natural gelling and stabilizing properties. The second product is called Ocean Boost, a highly purified fukoidan with clinically backed benefits for gut, immune, and skin health. These ingredients meet the growing demand for high-performance, bio-based materials, but more importantly, they help close the loop of this broken system. By sourcing from invasive algae, we avoid harvesting wild seaweed and reduce reliance on fossil chemistry and actively restore marine ecosystems. This is the circular economy in action, regenerating natural systems while building scalable, profitable, and resilient supply chains. It's very much nature-based, but it's also deeply business-based. We work directly with coastal communities to turn crisis into regenerative industry. And the result? Cleaner oceans, healthier products, and an economy that thrives by giving more than it takes. At Origin by Ocean, we are not just imagining a circular future. We are actually building it. 1 kilo of invasive algae at a time. Because sometimes the most powerful solutions are hiding in plain sight, growing from the problem itself. Thank you.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eduardo. I'm here representing the Renner stores. To give you a background, we are today the largest fashion retailer in Brazil in terms of number of stores and sales. We have other business units as well, so the Renner stores is the largest one, but there's also Yukon, which is our youth brand, Kamikado, which is our home decor brand, so includes furniture and home appliances. Also there's a Repassa, which is our second-hand fashion online store. And we sell post-process fashion. Also, there's a financial institute, it's called Realize, that supports our consumer journey. And Asha, which is the most recent brand, has 8 stores for the plus-size public. So there are 3 R's that support our main strategy. We want to be referenced in lifestyle and fashion, to be referenced as a charming company, and referenced as in sustainability. So that's what guides our sustainability strategies. The first commitment cycle was on the transition of raw materials and reducing emissions of scopes 1 and 2, looking at the corporate use of energy. So we did a transition in 100% of our corporate energy use in the stores and headquarters and distribution centers overall. We have 686 stores, 3 distribution centers, and also operate in Argentina and Uruguay.
When we look at the commitments launched in 2022, it places under the pillar of circular solutions and regenerative ones how to decarbonize our business. And here we have the main initiatives that we have done in circularity. This pillar context is based on our goals of our science-based targets, and Lojas Renner, as a company, needs to reduce by 55% its emissions by produced article. In present value, the raw material with lowest emissions are the recycled ones. When we look at our sector from a raw material standpoint, it is very dependent on agribusiness, cotton, chemical industry, when we talk about polyester and fibers that are pulp-based. We need to understand that this transformation of the business, looking at the principles of circularity, crosses an industrial transformation and how to rethink design, including all the circularity principles, the intentional choice of raw materials in the process, considering their environmental footprint. And we have a proposition for design that will integrate industry to retail and industry to item creation. Since most of the brands do not have their own production. So in a developmental context that is very important in this journey, we have already done this for some years. And we are trying to learn about the links in the chain. And based on public commitments, we also want to expand our connections and bring traceability to our cotton in Brazil and include this in our supply chain. Since 2011, looking at these initiatives, we have the reverse logistics program for flasks and packaging for perfume, and we have been working with EcoStyle for apparel items that lost their functionality within consumption, and we offer this as an environmental service. The great challenge that we have within the recirculation context for this raw material and this residue is to structure this ecosystem and in a collaborative way, what we need in terms of education and development, but also infrastructure. There's a paradigm that's very important for us to gain quality and scalability for residue and introduce this in ready items. I invite you to learn more about our initiatives by reading our annual report, which was launched recently. And likewise, I invite all of you by mid-June and end of July that you read our first IFRS report together with another Brazilian company. And these will be the first reports focusing on this new standard, looking at sustainability from the angle of risks and opportunities. Thank you very much.
Quero agradecer
I would like to thank Luisa Santiago, Luiz Meyer, Mary Grandstrom, and Eduardo Ferlauto for presenting these cases, these solutions, and the experience of these companies and your initiatives. And I'm sure that it was inspiring to this session. And thank you very much for your participation here. So please. In the next panel, we will speak English, so we will switch to English.
I'd like to invite to the stage our next panelists for discussion about innovation and investment enabling circular design for nature. Please. Sustainability researcher at European Triodos Bank, Macheta Kacic. Environmental economist and member of the Costa Rica Congress, Cynthia Córdoba. And FSC International Circularity Hub lead, Loa. Please. Firstly, I'd like to invite Machet Kajic for her opening words, please.
My voice is loud, but not quite that loud. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matia Kajic. I'm here representing Triodos Bank and Triodos Investment Management. Prior to joining Triodos, I got my doctorate in European environmental law, so that will give you some of the framing with which I come at this topic. But now I work in a completely different arena. Triodos is a values-based bank in Europe, and Triodos Investment Management is an Article 9 house, which means that we exclusively have sustainable investment funds. Well, I should hand it over to my panelists so that they have the time, but I did want to say that I think it's very good that we're here to discuss this topic, because I find nature-based solutions and circularity to really be sister concepts, to be interlinked in so many areas, and they often don't come across our desk in a project or a business together. So it's great to discuss those opportunities today.
Thank you, Matcha. Now I'd like to invite Cynthia Córdoba. Please, Cynthia.
Muy buenas tardes a todos y todas. Para mí realmente es un gusto estar aquí el día de hoy con todos ustedes.
Good afternoon to all of you. For me, circular economy and nature-based solutions is a source of inspiration. And we can inspire ourselves in it to not just when we work, but as an alternative for all changes that we are seeing in the world. From Costa Rica, we know that the nature-based solutions and circular economy are strongly linked, starting with the design, and not just thinking of the last production link, but also the residue. We want to aggregate this through other steps, and we want to show that circular economy and bio-based solutions are an opportunity to generate better goods and products, a better country, and a better society, and a better world and a better environment.
Of course. Hi, everyone. So, in case you don't know what FSC is, I brought a prop, so you now know maybe the logo, because people don't tend to remember the words, but they do remember the logo. FSC has always been nature-based. We've always worked with regenerative materials and healthy ecosystems, and done so in social compliance as well. So that was why we were founded as an NGO more than 30 years ago. But is it enough that we just look at regenerative materials? Is it enough that we're just pushing towards, yes, let's all make nature-based fibers the next new norm? And I would have to say, I don't think that it is. It is not enough that we take a plastic straw and replace it with a paper straw without also questioning what is the origin of that fiber, what is the life cycle of the product, how are we going to design this to actually be used over multiple times? Because we cannot afford that. We cannot afford to not think nature-based and regenerative and circular economy into one and the same loop. There simply just won't be enough fibers out there. If we look only at the forest-based materials, the World Bank has projected that we will see a 400% increase in demand for forest-based fibers before 2050. That's 200% more than what our forests can actually supply and remain healthy ecosystems. So we need to start thinking about this fundamentally differently. We need to start thinking circularity into the loop from the outset, and thinking about how nature has already given us the answer. There's no waste in nature. It is regenerative from the outset. So from FSC's perspective, we're right now thinking about how can we pivot all of our solutions so that we can help industry adjust so that we work in the same way as nature does, where we keep things in loop, but we're also basing on a nature-based economy.
Thank you, Loa. Now I'd like to address a question to all. Based on your operations, where do you see the synergies between circular economy and nature-based solutions? Macha, I hope I'm saying correctly your name now.
You are, and I accept all variations of my name, so don't worry. But yes, I wanted to build off of what you said, because I think it was a beautiful introduction. Nature is inherently circular, and in nature there's no need to consider the synergies between circularity and nature, because they are one and the same. With our economies, we can only hope to mimic these as well as it's done in nature. As I said, projects that combine both circularity and nature-based solutions are quite rare to come across our desks, and I think there's a whole host of reasons for this. There's issues with the enabling environment in terms of the regulatory frameworks. There's some issues on our side in terms of the financial incentives for circularity and for nature-based solutions, but that doesn't mean that their synergies are not there. So even with, we've known for a long time, even from the definitions from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, that regenerate nature concept is a part of the three principles of circularity, and now it's just about making sure that it's more frequently introduced in the sustainable industry process. An example that's very close to my heart that I think demonstrates these synergies in Triodos' own operations is, for example, our building. So the head office building of Triodos Bank in the Netherlands is very circular, so the timber that's used is entirely sustainable, it's locally sourced, it's often reclaimed or recycled wood. So there you've got the circularity component. The building is all, instead of using glue or other adhesives, the building is put together with screws so that it can be easily taken apart at its end of life. And of course, all the materials have material product passports. So that's all on the circularity side. But what about the synergy with nature? So I wouldn't say that it's by our definition strictly a nature-based solution, because for that we would really need to be giving back to nature, and we have some lovely financing examples of where we're able to do that. But the building is definitely design inspired by nature, or biomimicry at the very least. It's on the edge of a nature park, so we had to make sure to be kind of a sustainable barrier between the city and the nature park. So how do you do that without infringing on the ecosystems? Well, the building was designed in such a way that it considers nature in all aspects. So in the shape of the building, we wanted to ensure that it doesn't cut off the flight paths of bats and birds. We also wanted to ensure that we're not cutting off any access to the waterways for flora and fauna, not for flora, for fauna. So that's really all the ways that nature was considered in the way the building is designed. And you can see there how these two concepts play together, circularity and nature.
Cynthia, please.
Muchas gracias por la pregunta.
Thank you very much for the question. In Costa Rica, we consider that these nature-based solutions are employing bio-inputs, the livestock and forestry area. In the agricultural sector, I can share several examples that can be of interest to all, and we can also use as references the use of these inputs. Costa Rica has two very productive cultures, coffee and pineapple. We're the main pineapple producer in the world. So many solutions can be introduced based on nature. For coffee, for example, we have a coffee co-op that is carrying out very interesting actions. They use processes in which they use the waste in their operations, both for fertilizers and also improvements for microorganisms to better accept this entire process. We also reuse water to improve product quality, and this favors energy production as well. So we have circularity in this. Everything is used as inputs. So nature-based solutions impact greatly the productive process and also reduce environmental impacts, which is very important. And in Costa Rica, we have strong regulation towards this effect. There is a company called Nico Verde that has partnerships with the academic sector and generates knowledge that have been built into the productive process, which generates added value based on waste, both for organic fertilizers as well as edible mushrooms that have a high production cost, and some biomaterials that can be used in different processes of production. So this generates less impact to the environment and improvement in work, green work, support to communities, mainly women who have organized themselves. And all of this inspires other companies that produce pineapple to improve their work conditions, therefore generating this reutilization of residue, and this generates innovation, new products, and added value, and also green jobs and greater participation of communities that can access and have work in these companies. And we also have the acknowledgement of genetic improvements and new discoveries based on bio-inputs.
The 20 years that I've worked with FSC, I have been pushing company after company to just shift from fossil fuel-based to nature-based solutions and selling the idea that that was enough. And it's only within the last couple of 3-4 years that I really have taken in just how much forests are actually the original circular economy and how we need to look towards that for solutions. And the thing is that our forests are at such a vulnerable state right now across the globe that we're so very close and above the planetary boundary. So if we don't do something now, we're on the irreversible path. So what we're seeing is a lot of push for what I've been asking for so many years. We're seeing so many 100% policies for natural fibers. We're seeing a lot of public procurement policies pushing towards phasing out fossil fuels. We're seeing massive shifts in energy use, etc. But we have to work now to make sure that we're not pushing ourselves above and beyond the edge. We have to make sure that we don't get to the future where there won't be enough. And we can already see this happening. We can already see forest companies around the world wanting to just push that barrier one more step and do one more intensive bid because they can actually sell the product at a very good price in the market. So in FSC, we're really looking inward and saying, what is our role in this? How can we make sure that products stay in use for longer? But also, how can we make sure that we can financially incentivize forest owners to maintain healthy ecosystems? Because it has to be financially viable to have a product that is both from a resilient forest, but that also makes a community money. So we're really trying to change the way that we work, so we're not only nature-based, but that we're also pushing for the circular economy because they're part of the same equation.
Thank you, Loa. I'd like to address a question for Mattia. From a finance perspective, what is the rate of uptake and which barriers hinder financiers from investing then?
Yeah, I think it's a solid question, and it relates back to what I was saying earlier, that we don't see too many of the projects that combine these two approaches. I hope I'll have the opportunity in the following questions to highlight a really nice financing example, C Biotech, who really beautifully combine both of these concepts. But in relation to the financing barriers, the issues really come from, as I said, regulation, but also really in terms of the financial incentives. So both for circularity and for nature-based solutions, the incentives for financing are all much more long-term. So you are financing something today that you will only see the true positive nature effects and resource effects much in the future. And current traditional financing models simply don't take this into account. So you don't have the consideration of that residual value when you're doing your risk assessments. This is something that we, of course, want to change, and we are working on several flagship flagship projects that try to bring this to the foreground. So for example, in the Netherlands, we're working on developing the circular scorecard, which would take residual value into account, which would take the effects that a project has on nature into account. So that's what we're trying to do in terms of improving financing. But we also really wanted to create a commitment for ourselves, and we've committed to mobilizing about 500 million euros by 2030 to put specifically towards nature-based solutions projects. Now, for us, it's very important that we are intentional about this, so it's not just about throwing money at the problem, but we also are really developing detailed impact metrics for all of these nature-based solutions projects so that we can ensure that these projects we are financing and investing in really have the kind of tangible biodiversity and climate change impacts that we're after. So this is not only carbon tunnel vision, only carbon sequestration, but also improvements to biodiversity, improvements to the soil quality, land regeneration. These are all the types of metrics that we will be looking into for these projects.
Thank you, Matthew. Cynthia, as a policymaker and environment economist, what policy instruments or public-private partnership models have been proved effective or show strong potential to foster the integration of circular economy and nature-based solutions in Latin America?
Muchas gracias.
Ana Teresa, thank you very much. Based on my knowledge as a legislator and an environmental economist and employee of the Energy and Environmental Ministry, I think that nature-based solutions and circularity are not just a great opportunity for Latin America, but are necessary. This is a starting point that we cannot take a step back. We need to move on. We need to look clearly at a policy related to this topic. In Costa Rica, we count on a national bioeconomy strategy and also circularity, and also a strategy for biodiversity. Maybe here the issue is we want the three strategies to advance. In the end, what we want is to gain strength and maintain focus on this path. We don't want deadlocks for this topic and organizations and people that are part of this process. Another success story. It's indispensable along this process to create policies and strategies with the participation of all stakeholders from the start. We will not create something to present to them. They need to be part of the construction process. Their voices need to be heard from the start, and they must participate gradually. The productive industrial sector also need their considerations put on the agenda. I gave you the example from pineapple and coffee. So this has a strong extractivism impact. And we need to analyze what will be the benefits of these solutions based on nature and circular economy. Cost reduction will become visible, and business opportunities will be a win-win for the companies and for the country. Adequate instruments from a financial standpoint. This was also mentioned. This is one of the most important points when we talk about the lack of conditions and facilities to generate instruments or access to credit in the productive process. Costa Rica is also incorporating circular economy. This created an opportunity for companies to have access to these resources in an adequate form. We also see innovation in green bonds, blue bonds, and also sustainability bonds. So many investors will have the opportunity to participate in these initiatives. Another important aspect is research and development to increase these investments in biodiversity, nature-based solutions, and it's not always easy to start these processes. integration with academia and research centers can be a very important opportunity to produce better products that reach an export quality level. Otherwise, it just becomes a bottleneck if this process does not occur in parallel. Support to research. Another important aspect, in my opinion, that we should also create a manifesto is regarding the coherence of international milestones regarding circular economy to give visibility climate change, because this is the only way in which we can improve things. We have talked about mitigation, energy, transport, but the way we consume production, how everyone can educate themselves can make the difference. Here we have a great task, because this framework for nature-based solutions is also based on this. We have a challenge. We will discuss this here in Brazil at this convention for us to implement real and lasting solutions, how we consume, aware, mindful consumption, so that we can also reap benefits in terms of emission reductions, water reduction, and in the end, a better world.
Loa, how is FSC adjusting its standards and systems to support circular models that promote the regeneration of forest ecosystems, ensuring that certified products effectively contribute to the circular economy and long-term sustainability?
Yes, let's get tangible finally, because there's a lot of big talk and a lot of willingness to change, but how do we actually make it happen? So what we're doing at FSC right now is that we are adjusting, first and foremost, our chain of custody standards. So these are standards that track products over the entire production cycle. These standard covers almost 67,000 companies across the world. These companies range from anything from the size of companies like IKEA down to one-man band shops. And we're adjusting them right now to make sure that they cater for circular business models, that they incentivize keeping products in use, that they are really fit for a scale recycling, but that we make sure that we keep the products in use longer before we get to the recycling stage. And that's the low-hanging fruit, but we are also really thinking that we need to look at other mechanisms as well, because just having products in loop won't be enough on its own. So we're exploring two other concepts. And it's important for me to say that this is something that we're exploring still. We don't know whether it will pan out, but we're trying to figure out what role it could play inside the FSC system. So one of the things is that right now, the financial mechanisms that we have in this world only reward forest owners when they harvest. So the only thing that they get paid for is when they extract. But in reality, they're forest stewards. They maintain ecosystems. They have forests that store carbon, that clean water, that give a lot of social safeguards. So how can you make sure that they are rewarded for this work over time? In FSC, we talk about the true value of forest. This is the true value of forest. All of the other added benefits that forests give to this world. So what we're exploring is, can we create a financial model where forest owners are rewarded every time a product that they help produce fiber for is being reused or recycled? Can we create such a royalty system so they're rewarded multiple times? The second thing that we're exploring is, how can we relieve pressure on forests by utilizing some of the other natural fibers that we have? There's a lot of residues from agriculture, which today is being burnt in a very local scale, and the carbon is just being emitted. All of those fibers are cellulosic-based. That means that they could actually replace virgin forest-based fibers. So could we utilize those inside the FSC system through mutual recognition of other standards that are to an equal par to FSC, so that we would at the same time move things out of a waste stream and into being used, but also relieve pressure on forests. But I think more importantly, what we're really looking into is how can we as a system be a driver for the shift to a circular economy. I loved when Luisa said before that companies are key to this transition. I absolutely agree. You are. I think most of you in the room are for companies, and you are the key. But companies need frameworks, they need standards, they need things that they can fit into for this to scale. And we need to get to a point where this is no longer just pilot after pilot after pilot, but where we can actually scale it for impact. And that's where we think that we have a role to play. We have a large reach. We have 67,000 companies who are already certified. We have standards already set. We have frameworks already set that we can adapt and adjust and expand. We have digital infrastructure which could be expanded and utilized for a faster transition. So I've heard a lot over the last couple of days about legislation being a driver. I've heard a lot about funding being a driver, and I agree. But there's one word that I have not heard enough in these many different conversations, and that is third-party verification. We need to make sure that we have systems in place where we actually know where fibers are coming from, where we actually know that, yes, they are reused, in fact, or they are recycled, in fact, because otherwise we will just see a lot of companies with lesser intentions who will utilize this trend towards a shift to a circular economy. And that's where I think FSC and other standards could really play a role as well, because we don't want another Wild West like we've seen in carbon markets or like we've seen in recycled polyester, etc. So that's what me and my team is on a quest to do. Luckily, we have a lot of support from our global leadership and the International Board of Directors, because we have a lot of work cut out for us.
Thank you, Laura. Considering we have time to address one more question for all, short answers, please. I'd like to ask, how can circular design contribute to nature regeneration into industrial systems? Matcha?
Sure. I wanted to talk about the client C Biotech because they do a really beautiful example of showing how industry can be sustainable. They create sustainable building materials from hemp, and they create biocomposites and hemp wood and hemp wool for replacing various parts of buildings. And I would really like to go in depth about this, so if you would like to hear this, please let's discuss in the coffee break. But in short, what I wanted to say is that often we deem anything that is design inspired by nature a nature-based solution, but actually what makes a nature-based solution and what will have the greatest impact will be those that are not just design inspired by nature, but also those that give back to nature. And that's where C Biotech is a beautiful example, because other than creating these materials, they are also growing the hemp in a very specific way. So they grow it without synthetic fertilizers, without pesticides, and they grow it on lands that were specifically selected because they are degraded, because they contain PFAS, the forever chemical, and the hemp is actually able to extract it, and in that way the land is recovered and we are giving back to nature. So that's what, according to the Triodos definition, really makes it a nature-based solution and not just design inspired by nature. And in their business model, they also have a whole host of ways that circularity is introduced. So I would love to discuss this further. We should definitely continue the conversation, but I really wanted to leave you with this about the specificity of what makes nature-based solutions unique.
Cynthia?
Bueno, yo creo que Magia ya lo ha dicho, hay que inspirarse en la madre naturaleza.
Yes, we need to be inspired by Mother Nature in the process of reusing and not looking at things as a waste or residue, but just as the starting point of new added value, thinking about the impacts and the way we are doing things, taking future generations into account, which is very important. Oftentimes we forget.
0.0 seconds, I can see. Well, actually, I think I already gave a couple of examples of how we're seeing circular design fit with nature-based solutions. I think I would rather end on a call for collaboration and partnership, because FSC is a membership organization and one that's built on alliances. So if there's anybody in the room who really think, oh, that was pretty interesting, I want to learn more, I want to be engaged in that, and please come find me. I'm here the rest of the day and at the accelerator sessions, because we know as FSC that we won't be building this alone. This needs to be something that we build as an ecosystem. So this is our call to all of you to really get engaged with us so that we can get to a circular, nature-based economy.
Thank you, Matia, Loa, Cynthia. Senhoras e senhores, chegamos ao fim do painel.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap up this panel. First of all, I'd like to thank our panel members for such inspiring discussion. The experiences shared here today show us that nature is not just part of the solution, rather it's a source of wisdom. Integrating the answers that nature offers us to our production systems is a promising path ahead that will help us fight against the impact of climate change, biodiversity loss, and the unsustainable use of resources. Let's try to adopt these principles also in the way we design our solutions, adopting regenerative practices, adequate technologies, and collaborative partnerships. So let's move on together towards a restorative economy that values the thriving of the future generations. So that's the invitation. Let's move forward together, strengthening the connection between industries, geographies, and knowledges. Thank you so much for having joined us. Thank you for your input and thank you for your commitment with this transformative agenda. Thank you very much.